Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news, which as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hope you're all having an amazing day. We have an awful lot of news to get through in this video. I apologise for not being on camera, but it has been a couple of crazy days for me in general, and I am working on a couple of projects at the moment, including a review of an X570 motherboard, which is actually on the cheaper side, and that ties in very well with a piece of news that I'd like to start with today, which is the AMD B550 and A520 chipset information. So one of the things we'd hoped for at CES 2020 was news pertaining to the launch dates of those motherboards, because, you know, the X570 chipset's great and all, but quite frequently motherboards aren't exactly cheap, like $200 or more for an X570 motherboard. Now obviously if you're buying something like a 3900 or a 3950X and using it as kind of like an entry-level workstation, or you're doing a lot of video editing or what have you, and storage is of paramount importance, like you've got lots of NVMe drives which are maybe Gen 4, that's all great, but honestly, if you're just running like a 3600 or a 3700X and all you do is primarily game or maybe do a little bit of image editing, you don't really need that PCIe bandwidth. So, coughing up like $200–300 for a motherboard is kind of a hard pill to swallow. Anyway, there is a report going around from both China Times and Computer Base that as media are actually fulfilling the shipment orders for the B550 and A520 chipsets, and they are scheduled to enter mass production in the first quarter of 2020. And it looks like, therefore, we should see, and I stress the word should see, these motherboards reach store shelves by around the second-ish half of 2020. At the very latest, but most likely it could be a little bit earlier than that, and potentially in, let's say, the second quarter of 2020. Indeed, Computer Base believes that according to what they're being told, we should see the B550 chipsets be shown off at Computex, although these motherboards will only have PCIe 3. The timing for this is all kind of funny when you think about it, because let's say that we see it, you know, like, let's say Q2 2020. It's only going to be maybe 3 to 6 months later that we start seeing an awful lot of news for the Ryzen 4000 series, because Zen 3 looks like it's going to launch late Q3, early Q4. And yeah, it's just kind of funny regarding the timing, I guess. But if you do want to purchase a motherboard for a Ryzen 3600 or a 3700, then of course you are absolutely good to go with a B450 motherboard, and that motherboard as well will work of course with an RX 5700 or something like that. I'm putting that in this video because I've actually had a couple of people asking me, you know, is there any performance degradation with the RX 5700 or 5700 XT with PCIe 3? And the answer is no. I'm actually going to be doing a video on that soon. I meant to do it a while ago, but just some other things have come up, and I do have the performance numbers, so I'll probably throw it out as a quick video in the not too distant future. So the next story I'd like to discuss actually involves Nvidia. And apparently we will see an announcement of Ampere at GTC 2020. This is according to the sources of WCCF Tech, and they claim that we may see a launch of the GPUs in the second half of 2020. Now, there have been a lot of conflicting dates regarding announcements of Nvidia's next generation cards, as well as the release dates for the next generation cards. And you have to remember that while as gamers it's very tempting to just think of the GeForce lineup of cards, Nvidia also make quite a few pennies for the data center as well. So it's potentially possible that the data center could see a announcement, and then a couple of months later it could start shipping the card, and then as gamers we may need to wait 3 or 4 months more. Indeed, on the channel we covered a rumour maybe 3–4 days ago that Nvidia were planning to announce the next generation GeForce cards during August, which would be Gamescom, much like they did with their Turing line of graphics cards. The financial analyst Christopher Rowland also believes that Nvidia will be launching its graphics cards in the second half of 2020. I'm going to read out a quote verbatim. "We think Nvidia faces the reasonable street expectations in quite some time, with potential tailwinds from improving data center, switch, and a high-end GPU graphics processing unit attach rates for laptops and desktops, all in the front of a litany of upcoming 7nm launches over the next 9 months. I've been speaking to a couple of people, and the rumour is through the grapevine, gaming cards are most likely going to be Q3, though there's a potential possibility they could be Q4, although another person I was speaking to claims that that's a bit late and they could be a little bit earlier than that. So basically, at the moment, there is an awful lot of confusion what's going on with Nvidia's cards. So I would take this with a pinch of salt, and I would not go into GTC with expectations that they would announce the cards or expectations that they won't announce them. I do suspect that they may give a hint as to the architecture or the direction they're going, however, as a company. I'm also going to quickly cover another piece of Nvidia news, although Amy went into this much more in depth in a previous video, but this is basically just confirmation of the RTX 2060 KO. Actually, there's 2 cards in this particular lineup, and of course this is from EVGA. So one of them has a factory overclock of around 70 MHz and is priced exactly how you would expect to take on AMD's RX 5600. I don't really need to reel off the specifications, because if you have any idea at all about the specifications of the RTX 2060, you will know what these specifications are. Basically, this card is pretty much being tailored and pushed towards competing with the RX 5600. It makes me wonder whether AMD are going to drop the price of the 5600 by, let's say, $20-30 US, or whether they're going to just see how things go. I will also be extremely curious to see what the benchmarks of these 2 cards look like. Now, of course, the RTX 2060 does outperform the GTX 1660 Super and Ti, depending upon the game. It's between 20-30-ish%, once again, heavily dependent upon the game and the resolution. One area, though, that the RTX series of cards does obviously win is that it does support hardware ray tracing as well as DLSS. Honestly, hardware ray tracing is probably not something you're going to want to enable on a lot of games unless you have DLSS enabled. So the performance jump is, tangible from a GTX 1660 Super or a Ti, and honestly, the Ti is just overpriced in Nvidia's lineup right now because of the existence of the Super. So I guess it's one of those situations, just like we always see as a series of cards matures, where just like $20, $30, $40 US more can make an awful lot of difference in the product that you receive. And now we're going to finish the video off with a couple of pieces of news for the next generation consoles. The first concerns Sony. According to VGC, Video Games Chronicles, who have been discussing things with the Microsoft Xbox team, Microsoft are under the impression that Sony will be once again no-showing E3, and Wedbush securities analyst Michael Pachter has also said pretty much identical, that as far as he understands, E3 will not have Sony attend, which is going to be interesting. I guess that means that if that's the case, Sony will have kind of their own conference around the same time as E3, like let's say Nintendo have done in the past and Sony have done in the past. I think E3 now is no longer the powerhouse it used to be, particularly in the days of, well, live streaming and just the changing face of video games. I remember like when the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 launched, and there was so much hype around E3, it was just ridiculous. And of course, even reading magazines back in the day, But now it's like everyone can just easily run their own live stream and have the conference and kind of do it how they want. So I don't necessarily know if it's a big deal for Sony not to attend E3. After all, they didn't do it last time. And now I'd like to cover one final piece of news because it's been absolutely blowing up over on the internet, on social media, and I've had so many DMs about this. But to me, it's not that big of a piece of news if you look at it into some level of context. So what on earth am I talking about? Well, it comes down to the fact that the Xbox Series X will not have exclusive games for the first 1 to 2 years. In fact, when you think about it, this actually is something that Microsoft has basically confirmed for a long time. Even Scarlet, when it was first announced, the team were very quick to point out that Halo Infinite, for example, would be on the original Xbox One and Xbox One X. You'll be able to play it on those systems. I'm going to read out a quote from official Xbox magazine and also a response from Microsoft. You mentioned that there will be games announced before the end of the year. We think many people were surprised to see Microsoft announcing a new Xbox One games with Project Scarlet launching in holiday 2020. Imagine that the Eye of Sauron would have shifted to a new target. Why do you support the Xbox One? And according to Microsoft's Matt Booty, please put your best jokes in the comments down below. It's interesting that you bring this up. I think people want to feel comfortable about investing in the Xbox, and whether that means that's this holiday you're going to buy the Xbox One S, or next fall you're going to buy Scarlet, you're going to feel comfortable either way, and that content library that you invest in is going to be going forward, so you don't have to feel like you're making a choice between generations, right? I think that's important to us. So I think that there's a couple of problems with the misunderstanding here. The first is that some people are just reading the headlines, and certain websites are reporting stuff like Xbox Series X will have no exclusive games at launch, which, if you don't, of course, read the article, then it does sound an awful lot like Microsoft are basically having nothing ready for the console's launch, and you're only going to be able to purchase games from, let's say, the Ubisofts and Electronic Arts, in other words, cross-platform titles. And then you also have a lot of people that kind of look at it, well, yeah, I get that. I get that you're going to be able to pick up a game which runs on the Xbox One and the PC as well, but it still means that people aren't pushed to buy the next generation console from Microsoft. But the thing is, Sony and Microsoft have slightly different agendas. Now, of course, at the end of the day, Microsoft want you to buy their next generation Xbox because, well, they do. I mean, Microsoft would like you to pick up the new Xbox, but they also want you to be involved in their ecosystem. And at the end of the day, it's one of the reasons why it's so easy to run, let's say, less than genuine copies of Windows, because people, of course, will still buy things from the Windows Store, even if the, let's say, copy is less than genuine, because it still gets you inside their ecosystem. You can still pick up an Office 365 subscription. You can still buy movies from Windows Store or get Game Pass for PC and so on and so on. Indeed, Xbox head Phil Spencer has said that the subscribers for the Xbox Game Pass has doubled over the last year. This was actually a report back in November of 2019. And indeed, back in May of 2019, which is an awfully long time ago in the grand scheme of things, Xbox Game Pass was said to have over 9.5 million monthly subscribers. So Microsoft to not just cut you off if you're a subscriber because you can't afford, let's say $500 for the new high-end Xbox, or you don't want to buy the lower-end Xbox, you're kind of waiting for a price drop or whatever, makes sense, because if you can't play the new Halo Infinite or whatever other games Microsoft launches, you're going to say, well, why am I paying this monthly subscription when I can't even play the new games? And of course, Microsoft's revenue and subscribers would drop. Also meaning that they have less incentive to stick with Microsoft, meaning they could potentially move to PlayStation. At the end of the day, if you can't afford a new console, but a game is exclusive to that console, it doesn't make a difference. You can't buy the console to play the game. You're broke. It doesn't matter if it's like exclusive. So if Halo Infinite was exclusive to Scarlet, people aren't going to say, well, gee whiz, I can't actually like play this. Like, what am I going to do? Okay, well, I guess I only need one lung. It's like, yeah, of course, Microsoft want you to have this transition, and Sony are probably going to have a similar thing as well and have certain games which will run on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. But Microsoft and Sony also have a different strategy, because Microsoft kind of want you in the ecosystem, Sony wants you to buy the PlayStation hardware, and, you know, neither strategy is wrong, it's just slightly different for both companies. And honestly, having that transition period between consoles is also nothing new, it's just more profound now because A, the architectures of the 8th and 9th generation, or Xbox One, Xbox Scarlet, is so similar, and also because Microsoft have, of course, the Windows side of the equation as well, and also this is a tried and true strategy. Like, if you remember, Nintendo launched Zelda on the GameCube and also on the Wii, and then they did the same for the Wii and Wii U, and then the Wii U and the Switch, and so on and so on. So, to be honest, this is like non-news, and it's still really early at the moment to know which console is going to have awesome games available for it. I'm waiting to see what the exclusives for the platforms rather than the consoles themselves are going to be. But I honestly think that the next generation consoles, whether you want to stick with Sony, whether you want to stick with Microsoft, or frankly the best option, at least in my opinion, if you can afford it, is to pick up both consoles. And I'm really curious to see what Nintendo are doing with the upcoming new version of the Switch as well, and how they're even going to handle that. So yeah, I think the next generation of games is going to be awesome. With all of that said though, I kind of went on a bit of a rant there, so I apologise. But I hope you're all having an amazing day, and I'm going to let you all go. So take care of yourself. Thank you very much for watching the video. Bye for now.